once again, here we are to talk about you a little bit. We talked the first half about an experience you had flying, and that was while we were at the NEMSPA booth at AMTC. So what we're here today to talk about is your personality. And I'm using an assessment called the Risk Type Compass. Did you take a look at that when you got the results back?
Yes, I did. So it's composed or something like along those lines.
Yeah.
It's the result.
Um, so we'll take a look at what that kind of means as far as how you feel, and as we go through this, we'll talk about some of the things that they say in the assessment. Um, what do you feel when you talked about a time that you were doing some training and you were trying to land on the back of a cruiser? Uh,
Yes.
big boat, but small compared to the Earth.
Yes.
So you're trying to land, and it's also moving and trying to make it difficult for you the whole time. Um,
Yes. And it was at night and low light conditions with mist and yeah,
yeah. So
all the bad things.
after reading the risk type compass in your report a little bit, did you anything that stood out for you before we actually dig into it, especially
I
compared to
skimmed
what you were doing?
I skimmed through it and I thought it seemed pretty accurate. It was talking about how or it was with my personality type, you just kind of handle the emergency and then kind of worry about it later. Just kind of do what you need to do in the moment and then let the emotions come in later.
Yeah, that was something that I figured out over the years is pilots, we are very good at forgiving ourselves for just about killing ourselves and everybody on board. Uh, Does
Yes.
that make sense?
Took me a little while to learn that through flight school. I was definitely one that would stew over a single mistake in a flight, but once I learned to just relax and keep going, I got to be a
Yeah,
much better pilot.
and it's a weird way to think about it that we got to forgive ourselves. But if we don't forgive ourselves, if we don't let ourselves get past that thing very quickly, that moment very quickly, something worse could happen as we continue to, like you said, stew over it. And so that's a gift. And there's a
Yes.
reason why pilots tend to focus on those personality types. I think that's something that they could do that. So as we look at this, there's several different parts, and that's what I like about being able to do this here. It gives us a chance to kind of focus a little bit more on it. And basically what this page is just telling us is that there are 8 types, so you can see the circle there. And this is kind of the breakdown amongst the general population. So I think this is based on about 14,000, 12 or 14,000. I don't know if it says in here, probably not. But it's based on about 12 or 14,000 people that have taken this thing, and it pretty much comes out at about 11% each of those
Okay.
8 types plus the axial in the middle. So while that's not one of the 8 types, it's actually something that we see a lot of, and I have a theory about that. So it's both our emotions and our intellect that kind of create how we look at risk. And so what happens, what I've discovered is doing the research that I did with this, pilots tend to be right about here. So they tend to fall into those 3 categories plus the axis or the axial mode.
Okay.
Uh, so let's come down here. Here's where you came out. So you came out, like you said, composed. The composed risk type is down to the southwest or southeast corner here. And you actually come out almost dead center and very, very much on pretty close to the edge.
Okay.
Now, if you look at this, and I got to lean forward to read these a little bit on my small laptop. Um, Even when things go wrong, they don't dwell on regrets. They don't harbor grudges or bear resentment. The composed type manages stress well, rides out any turbulence, and stays on task, not reckless and not averse to risk either. This type keeps their nerve and sees things through. Does that sound a lot like you?
Yes. Yes, it does.
As you were describing that,
Persistent. Yeah.
especially as you're describing that event, um, it sounded a whole lot like that. You you
Okay.
you you kept talking, and I don't know if you saw the video
I
and
watched most of it. Yeah.
rewatched it. When I rewatched it, and after knowing this, one of the things that really stood out was the way you talked about how you stayed on task, you followed the checklist, you continued to work through the problems. There's not much else you can do other
Nope.
than freak out, and that's one of the
And that's not
great
going to
things.
help you.
What's that?
Yeah, and that's not going to help you freaking out.
No,
So,
no. Um, so that's a really interesting way of looking at risk. You know it's there. You're in the middle of a really risky maneuver, and yet you're calmly walking your way through it. Hopefully calmly.
yeah.
So that's kind of neat. Um, they have a high level of poise, self-belief, optimism, resilience, and most extreme samples are calm, unemotional, and quite unflappable. We're going to talk about the negatives of that in a little bit,
Okay.
uh, but we're gonna look a little bit more. Um, Now, how strongly you reflect your risk type. You're way out here. You reflect that particular risk type pretty strongly. So you
Okay.
come across probably fairly calm, and a lot of that might be from your time as an instructor pilot. I know my time as instructor pilot in a flight school, uh, banging those aircraft on the ground all the time. It's like, yeah, that was not a good one. Let's go do it again. Uh,
Yep.
uh, so is there any other event that you might want to share quickly that might show what this kind of personality?
Sure. We're talking about another time being out to sea at night.
Okay.
Um, so we typically didn't get great weather information from the ship before we took off. So
Uh-huh.
our weather information was walk out on the flight deck, hold the goggles up to your face, and look around and see what was out there. So we took off for a routine night flight. This was a whole strike group exercise post deployment to keep our skills up, and we were just supposed to go out there and run our radar and see who was out there again. Well, we took off, and once we got clear of the ship and did our normal procedures, we got our radar turned on and realized there are radar hits everywhere. And that meant that we were likely seeing some kind of frontal passage. So we were about to see a cold front envelop us. It's like a horseshoe all around us. Um, and the carrier was working hard to get all the jets landed. And once they did that, they did their typical turn and went right into the storm. So the helicopters that were up were all trying to get back to the carrier. I was based off a cruiser again at this point, so we were trying to stay out of the storm. But once we were enveloped, we had no way to go. Um, so we started working our way back to our ship because the other helicopters were decided to get into formation and fly that together, which I probably wouldn't have done, but they decided that was their best option, was to fly together. So I stayed well clear of that and went over to where our ship was, which was 10, 15 miles away. I don't remember exactly how far we were away. Um, but ended up being zero visibility. We always saw it was rain. It was heavy rain. And I called the ship and said, "Hey, we're coming into land. We can't safely do our mission anymore." So we start proceeding through that. They start getting set up. I asked them to turn all their lights on this time so they would have for an unaided night recovery so I could see them, because all I'm seeing is flashes from lightning everywhere and rain. It's like, well, at least if I see their bright white lights, I'll be able to go toward the consistent bright white light
Yeah.
and get through it. I had them on, I had TACAN on them and I had them on radar, but just getting that visual cue is also immensely helpful. When they came back and said, well, we can't do that because you're on goggles. And I said, I don't care. I'm the one flying. I want it. Give it to me. And they eventually did. And of course, they hadn't turned those lights on forever, and that started an electrical fire on the ship. So now they can't land me because they're dealing with an electrical fire, and it's got smoke billowing out of the control tower where they have all the light controls. So they finally got that figured out. I broke out on the other side of the cold front, and then it was a typical clear-ish landing. It was no big deal. But luckily, I had a really good co-pilot with me. I was the aircraft commander on this one, and our crewman he had been through a deployment, so he was seasoned a little bit. So he wasn't a brand new guy, but he wasn't, the 3-4 deployment type guy either. But we just, kept a really good instrument scan and just pushed through because we had no other choice. You don't really want to fly through a cold front, but in that situation, we had no choice.
Wow.
And we definitely complained that the carrier did not send over weather information because they were supposed to, and they did not, which was pretty typical. And we've been complaining about it, and nothing was changing, but we were still expected to go fly. So we went flying.
Well, obviously, with the helicopters going back to the carrier, they didn't get the weather report very well either.
No, they did not.
And they lived there on that aircraft, right there on the aircraft.
Yeah, yes, they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I can honestly tell you, I've never dealt quite with that. However, I have been, and in EMS, what you'll do is you'll walk out the door, you'll look around the same way just to confirm that what you just read is accurate. So let's move on here with the upside tendencies of this risk type. Risk type is confident and has few doubts about their own ability. Obviously, in a situation like what you were just describing, again, confidence is a key factor in surviving in something like that. Not especially meticulous nor creative, they are confident decision makers. One of the things I've discovered is that you may not be the person who can quote regulations, paragraph and line number, but you're the person that knows them extremely well and knows how you fit into that. Does that?
I would say that's accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, I always had a tough time memorizing the exact verbiage out of stuff, but I could tell you the meaning of it without a doubt.
Okay, good. Because what I just described is the northeast corner. So that other group of aviators up there tend to be more like that. And they can.
I have seen a lot of those guys.
Yep, and they drive me crazy. They're quoting paragraph and line number, and I'm going, okay, I'll take your word for it.
But then they wouldn't understand how to apply it half the time. So
well, and that's the difference. Okay, and yeah, we can talk more here in a little bit. Their capacity to trust others is a solid basis for working relationships. They don't dwell on past mistakes. They are likely to be upbeat, optimistic in their approach. They tend to be patient, purposeful, and conscientious. Their feelings tend not to interfere with the logic of their viewpoint. That's an interesting statement.
That's very true.
Because that's the other end of that spectrum from northwest to southeast. That emotional spectrum, and you're way on that end from where you're positioned at. That emotion doesn't get in the way.
No, it's very rational decisions, very logical decisions, and emotion doesn't really play a factor.
And that might also include how you talk to people.
Yes.
Which we'll get to here when we talk about downsides. Can be sure of themselves that they can be so sure of themselves they don't have a plan B.
That doesn't sound accurate.
Again, your training I think helps you. You're right.
Yes.
They take things down to the wire before acknowledging defeat. And now this is the extreme part of this type. We are that whole circle. So in your training, you've been trained to do a lot of these things that I'm saying are your negatives, but that's when everything goes to crap, you might go more to how you feel more comfortable. And so you might actually do some of these. They may not draw wildly on other available perspectives and opinions.
Yeah, I could see that. My personality type, yeah.
Again, these are the downsides. So if you've learned to deal with them, certainty in decision making makes them slow to acknowledge problems. In your life or anywhere, but okay.
I'm not really sure about that one, but yeah.
Okay. Being so confident they may miss vital new information.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. can appear, here's the important part, is how you appear to other people. They can appear unaware of significant risk associated with a proposal.
Yes, because I will be very calm and collected, and it is, a risk factor, but it's not necessarily
Yeah.
going to derail the whole mission. So I won't start getting emotional because there is a risk factor.
So with more emotional people on board, hence more like the medical crews, have you run into that at all?
Yes. Oh, yes. Had an incident last hitch. It was all pre-flight, though. We ended up declining the flight for weather because the
Okay.
med crew was not comfortable, even though I said I was quite comfortable with it.
Yeah.
They heard me say risk factor at 3 a.m. and they kind of spun up about that.
Yeah, I can see it. Very sure of themselves. They may seem self-important or arrogant. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that.
Yeah, once in a while.
You're easy to talk to, so I haven't had any problem from the little time I've talked with you. Comfortable about risks themselves. Expectations of others may be unrealistic. The expectations of how you feel, or maybe how other people feel. I can't sure.
Yeah,
In fact, what you're just
especially like when
talking
you're
about.
flight instructing, you're comfortable with a much wider envelope of what is safe than you might feel comfortable with your student performing.
Okay.
I could see something like that. And part of that probably goes to I'm confident in my skills and my ability, and maybe not so confident in someone who's got 20 flight hours in a helicopter.
You're right. With little variation in emotional expression, they may be hard to read.
Yes, that one definitely.
You've had that problem. Okay.
Yes.
Let's see, your most prominent characteristics. I'm just going to blow this up a little bit more. We can do this. There we go. So these are the most distinct characteristics for you. Seem practical, down to earth, unsentimental. See the importance of basing decisions on facts and logic rather than on your feelings.
Yes.
Generally be disposed to trust others.
Yes.
To trust others and have faith in their good intentions. You have a systematic approach, preferring to plan things carefully before you act.
Generally, yes.
Which is one of the reasons you get upset about not having good weather.
Yeah.
You seem compliant, someone who will respect rules, regulations, and authority.
Yes.
And this is where it's starting to go a little bit more to the north at times, but you follow all those rules, you follow all those regulations. That authority is still important. You just may not be able to quote the exact where to find it. I think that's the big thing here. You know it.
Yes.
You're quick-witted, person who thinks on their feet. I don't know if you remember, I know you were in my class at AMTC, correct?
Yes.
If you remember when I went through the personality types in there, and I talked about the 4 different types, and the type that matches yours the most, I think I described it as wrote the book on. You're basically the kind that you're going to write the book on it. That's the way you fly.
Okay.
And so that's how well you know it. It's really about knowing what you're doing, about the confidence in your competence, if that makes sense. So It's about competency. When you see somebody who doesn't look competent, how does that make you feel that way?
That irritates me. I expect everyone to be able to do their job and pull their weight and do their fair share. So if you're not competent, that's not the end of the world as long as you're working on it. But people who are not competent and not working on it, that irritates me.
Okay. So, and that's why I tend to bring a couple different assessment tools, and I share a little bit of each, and they really overlap nicely, but they have a different way of looking at the same thing. So let's move down here. So this is the subtheme. So as it goes through those questions that they asked, what they are questioning are certain subthemes. And so they analyze different perspectives of each of these. And you can see here the emotional side. Let me shrink this back down a little bit. You can see here on the emotional side, there's not a whole lot there. So you stayed away from the emotions, although this isn't as bad as I've seen other people.
Okay.
So you have some emotion. So you're
I
willing
do.
to deal with it. And a lot of that, again, comes from you dealing with people on a regular basis. The people that are with you have to be that way, so you can see that way a little bit, and you're at least comfortable that way. Measured is that area that really focus. This is where we're trained. We're trained in this area, the prudent personality type, the measured personality type, all about the cognitive. So it's a very strong, very measured cognitive way of looking at what you're doing. And here's the opposite of that. Emotional side is calm, and you can see where you came out very strongly there. Now the interesting thing is the strength also of the daring side. But this is the daring end of the cognitive scale. So when you
Okay.
look at that, you're fairly daring also. So you're willing to take risk, a little bit more seat of the pants type risk, the way you just feel comfortable doing that. I think that's how you show some of your emotion, is you're willing to
Okay.
kind of go that direction. So instead of going directly across, I think you maybe kind of slide around here and you kind of meet it halfway. But this is probably where you, like I said, you came out so strongly there that I got no doubt this is where you're most comfortable with. Very forgiving. This is where I get that forgiving statement from, is that ability to forgive ourselves especially, and to forgive others and move on to continue taking risk or continue doing the things that you need to do to get your job done. Don't do that too much, but it's definitely a skill that we have that allows us to continue to work. Interpreting the risk types, so you can have more interpretation in that. So you take a look at this now, as you look at those sub themes, where are you strongest? Where maybe should you work a little bit more on?
Okay.
When I look at an accident, I always ask myself, or I start out, this person is not stupid, and this person is not trying to kill themselves. So why did they do something stupid and kill themselves?
Okay.
And so one of the things that I think happens is you put a lot of pressure on yourself to go fly in order to show, especially in your particular case, you might be trying to show them how competent you are, how good you are at what you do. And you might take yourself a little bit further than what you normally would other than that, because you're comfortable doing that. Where you're not comfortable about people thinking that you're not capable of doing something.
Okay. I could see that.
You can see that? Okay.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened to you yet, has
No.
it? One of the things that I discovered over the years of flying, so I spent 16 years flying EMS after I retired out of the Army. As those years progressed, events happened along the way that have made me more and more less caring about my reputation. You can think anything you want to of me. I don't really care. And that's what I want people to know and learn to be able to do it sooner in their career, so that they don't run into those things like I did, where I was really stupid and pushed myself way too far. And I think part of that was exactly the description that I had there. So it's one of the reasons why we're doing this. And hopefully you get something out of that too, and get something from your personality type. Anything else you got?
There's an old saying in the motorcycle community that the best thing an old biker can do for a new biker is to teach them how to become an old biker. And I think it applies the same way to aviation and with pilots.
Well,
teach the young guys who are willing to take more risk, how to maybe not take that risk or manage that risk more appropriately.
Right.
So they can stick around longer.
One of the things that I know Wade Cook was in that group of smart people that you sat in at AMTC. And I really liked one of the comments that he made about, now I've lost my thought.
Don't do me any favors.
Well, no, when you go out looking for a new job, so this somebody asked, what do I look for as I'm looking to find that first flying job, that first thing after flight school and after being an instructor? He says, go work for somebody who is going to hold your feet or who is going to hold you to a standard. So if you first thing you do is go out and find a job that's free and clear and you can do anything you want and nobody's watching over you and you're learning how to fly some great way to flying, but you're not learning how to hold yourself to a standard. And that was one of his comments was find that company that hold their people to the standard, and you'll learn how to fly correctly and live a lot longer than what you might otherwise do. The other thing that you're talking about was there's no such thing as an old bold pilot.
Similar sentiment, yes.
Yeah. Anything you want to finish with here or what do you think of this?
No, it's pretty good. I think it's pretty accurate. I'm always kind of hesitant when I'm doing these surveys and how are they taking what I put on this question and figuring out who I am, and they actually did a fairly good job of describing my personality.
Yeah, good. And I, like I said, I hope this makes you a better pilot. I hope this helps you work with some of the people around you. That's where we're going with all this.
Thanks, Ken.
You're welcome, and thanks, Matt, for your time. And had a great time talking with you. And maybe we'll see you again in the future.
All right, sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.